A jealous New York man has been sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for slashing an Instagram star's throat, then posting gruesome images of her bloody body online. It all began in 2019 when Brandon Clark, who was 21 years old at the time, met 17-year-old Bianca Devins on Instagram. She was popular on this social platform and had 170,000 followers as an e-girl who posted about emo fashion and video games. After initially keeping their communication strictly on the platform, they began meeting in person. At that time, Brandon attended Bianca's graduation party. They became friends, but Bianca quickly realised that Brandon wanted more than just a friendship. He would often refer to himself as Bianca's boyfriend, despite her saying otherwise. Brandon's internet search history revealed an unhealthy obsession with her, showing searches of her name and saving photos of her. On the 13th of July 2019, they attended a Nicole Dollanganger concert together in New York City. They met a male friend named Alex and smoked cannabis together. During the concert, Brandon witnessed Bianca kiss Alex, which angered him. After the concert, Brandon drove Bianca to Utica in his car, where she slept in the back seat. Early the following morning, Brandon parked the SUV in a deserted, dead-end street in a wooded area in Post Street in Utica. Brandon was still feeling hurt that Bianca kissed Alex at the concert, so he woke her up to confront her. She apologised, but said they were not in a monogamous relationship. Feeling angered and frustrated, he began assaulting Bianca before reaching for a long knife he hid behind the seat of his car and repeatedly slit her throat in a jealous rage, killing her. He then took photos of a mangled corpse and posted it on Instagram and Discord. He posted one of the photos with the caption, "I'm sorry, Bianca." Brandon called 911 to tell them what he had done after authorities started receiving calls reporting the online photos. During the recorded call he said, "My name's Brandon. The victim is Bianca Michelle Devins. I'm not going to stay on the phone for long because I still need to do the suicide part of the murder-suicide." After determining the location of the call, officers descended onto Post Street. There the officers found a black SUV parked in a quiet spot with a man lying on the ground beside it. When the officers cautiously approached Brandon, they asked him where the woman was. He said she was beneath the tarp and directed them to the body. This was when they found a coloured tarp not far from the SUV from where they were standing. The officers were alarmed after they noticed protruding brown hair from beneath the tarp. Lifting the tarp, they uncovered Bianca's lifeless body, revealing extensive injuries to her neck, almost to the point that she was decapitated. Brandon then began stabbing himself in the neck, all while posting more photos online. His suicide attempt was unsuccessful, however, and he was arrested and hospitalised. Authorities collected duct tape, knives, rope, and other tools from the crime scene, which was used as evidence to prove the murder was premeditated. During sentencing on the 15th of March 2021, Brandon expressed remorse for his gruesome internet slaying of Bianca. "I hate myself for what I did to her. I don't understand how I could do something like that. I'm so sorry I put everyone through this. I'm so sorry that I put Bianca through this." Brandon, who's now 22, pleaded guilty to murdering Bianca and will spend between 25 years and life behind bars. A suspect involved in the shooting and killing of 8 people in 3 separate massage parlour attacks on Tuesday in the Atlanta area has been arrested. 2 spas were in Atlanta and 1 was in the Cherokee County. 6 of the 8 victims were Asian women. 4 people were killed and 1 other was injured at the Young Asians massage parlour on Highway 92 in Cherokee County at around 5 p.m. When officers arrived there, they found 2 people who were dead inside, with 3 others still alive. The 3 injured people were rushed to hospital, but 2 succumbed to the gunshot wounds. Police have suppressed the identity of the victims at this stage, but they did say that the deceased are described as 2 Asian women, 1 as a white woman and 1 as a white man. The person still alive in hospital is a Hispanic man. The suspect then drove 30 miles south, shooting at 2 Atlanta massage parlours that are across the road from each other on Piedmont Road, resulting in 4 deaths. 3 people were killed at the Gold Spa, while the 4th was murdered across the street at Aromatherapy Spa. These shootings occurred at roughly 5:47 PM and 5:57 PM respectively, and all 4 victims were Asian women. Later that evening, the authorities released surveillance pictures of the suspect that's been identified as 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long of Woodstock. The images at the Atlanta Spa shows the same man and car at the Cherokee County Spa. At around 8:30 PM, officials spotted Long's car in Crisp County, Georgia, about 150 miles south of Atlanta, and performed a pit maneuver on his SUV. This brought his car to a stop, and the suspect was arrested and taken to the Crisp County Jail. Police have not discussed the possible motive of the attack, and it appears that nothing was stolen from the victims or locations. They did say, however, that they'll look at the possibility whether the crimes were racially motivated as the investigation into the matter continues. A body of a man that was stabbed, dismembered, partially decapitated, and possibly shot was discovered in a hotel room in southwest Houston, Texas, as multiple suspects remain at large. Through witnesses and surveillance footage, the investigators have been able to determine that a Hispanic man in his 30s, who later becomes a victim, checked into a hotel room with a man and a woman at the Palace Inn, located at 8200 Southwest Freeway, on Sunday afternoon on the 14th of March. After grabbing some complimentary snacks, the trio went to room 205. The victim then drove the woman from the hotel and later returned. The victim and the other man were inside the hotel room when 3 additional men and a different woman arrived. The 4 newcomers went into the room and were seen leaving with the original man who checked in. The men were then seen carrying large duffel bags in and out of the room, which police said at this stage it's unknown what those bags contained. A woman was standing outside and appeared to be serving as a lookout. When it came to checkout time at 11:30 AM the following morning, no one was answering the door, so hotel staff went in and made a horrifying discovery. They found the lifeless body of a man there, with his limbs amputated and his neck viciously slashed, to the point of it being partially decapitated. The body was laying near the bathroom, and there was a lot of blood, and 911 was contacted. The authorities arrived about an hour later and entered the room to collect evidence to begin their investigation. The authorities said that during a preliminary investigation that there appeared to be some sort of altercation involving multiple people that led to the man's murder. It's believed that the killing happened somewhere between 9 PM and just after midnight when the other people arrived. The man who checked into the room left in a blue Hyundai sedan. The other 4 people left in a dark-coloured SUV. These suspects remain at large. A Florida man has been arrested for allegedly posing as a woman's Uber driver before raping her at his apartment. The horrible ordeal began on Saturday the 13th of March when an 18-year-old woman got separated from her friends at an America's Backyard restaurant in Fort Lauderdale. She had been visiting from Alabama and requested an Uber driver that night. When she saw a car along 100 block of Southwest 3rd Avenue, she mistaken it to be her ride. She approached the vehicle and asked the man if he was her Uber driver, and he replied yes. He then said he would take her home. As she enters the vehicle, the driver, 37-year-old Shepsley Silencio, starts driving. As they're driving away, the teen gets a notification on her phone that her Uber request has been cancelled and she's been charged a certain fee. Unconvinced that he was the driver, she questioned him again, but he insisted that he was, though he said he would need to make a stop at his apartment to grab his wallet to buy some gas. He drove to his apartment, where he said he lived with his family, and invited her up. While he searched for his wallet, the woman sat and waited on the seat of a tricycle near the entrance of his home. She used the toilet there, and as she thinks they are departing, Shepsley stops her. He grabbed her and pulled her onto the bed and tried taking her pants off, but she kicked him. While attempting to unbutton her pants, he put his hands inside the victim's underwear. Shepsley then straddled the woman, pinned her to the bed with his knees, while he removed her pants. He then allegedly forced her to give him oral sex for 10 minutes. The woman, who cried through the ordeal, ended up biting him on the penis. After forcibly raping her, he apologised multiple times and then handed her a pair of sunglasses. When she tried calling an Uber driver, he snatched her phone and then dropped her off at Bell Harbour. After being dropped off, she managed to memorise his number plate and she called 911. Police then tracked down Shapley, where she later positively identified him in a photo lineup. He was booked into the Broward County Detention Centre on the 14th of March on a $50,000 bond, which he later posted. Uber confirmed that Shapley was a driver, but the app was not used during the trip. The company said, while this trip did not take place on the Uber app, we immediately removed the driver's access to the app as soon as this was reported to us. Everyone has the right to travel safely, and our thoughts are with the victim after this horrific experience. A Florida man has been arrested on Friday afternoon for fatally shooting his neighbour during a family property feud, which was captured on the victim's cell phone. The incident occurred on a 40-acre property located in Christmas, Florida, that's used by family members who inherited it in 2016. There are various residences scattered throughout the estate with no true boundary lines, creating havoc and tension within the community. On the 12th of March, officers descended onto the property after receiving reports of gunfire. When they arrived, they found 30-year-old Billy Irvin Nobles in pain after being shot by a 69-year-old neighbour, Ralph Christie Jr., over a bitter land dispute. Billy is related to Ralph through marriage in the family, who is a grandson of his brother-in-law. Just moments before the shooting, Billy had used a backhoe to build a driveway so the neighbours no longer needed to share one. Ralph's wife, Juanita Christie, noticed him using the backhoe to knock trees down outside her house without her permission. She explained to the investigators that she confronted Billy. She said he was about to run her over with the backhoe on the couple's property when her husband fired at him to protect her. She claimed Billy hit the wheel of the backhoe into her knee, causing her to be pinned against some vines. While all this was happening, Billy recorded footage of the incident on his cell phone, which disproved her claims, showing that she wasn't in the path of the backhoe as her husband opened fire. Billy's wife said she heard the shot and noticed his cell phone was in video mode when she went to help him. A 23-minute recording on his phone showed that Juanita was yelling at Billy and was leaning on the backhoe's bucket to block it from moving. The video captures Ralph coming out of his house with a rifle and Juanita stepping out of the way. At about 15 feet away, Ralph opened fire after Billy yelled, "What the fuck is your deal?" After being shot once, Billy began writhing in pain and repeated that he had children. He was taken to the Advent Hospital East, but later succumbed to his injuries. Billy is survived by his wife, who is pregnant with their third child, and 2 sons. Ralph was arrested and held without bond at the Orange County Jail and will face charges for murder with a firearm. A couple have been sentenced to 32 years to life in prison for the torture and the murder of the man's 4-year-old daughter. The abuse began back in 2012 when 21-year-old Ronald Greer and 19-year-old Bianca Stanch lived in a flat together with 4-year-old Samaya Downing in Adelanto, California. Samaya was the daughter of Ronald, however Bianca had extreme hatred for her and treated her badly. She abused the young girl on a daily basis, yet her father would stand by and do nothing to stop the abuse. She would duct tape her wrists and ankles and force her to stand in the corner for 8 hours. She would deadlock her in the bedroom so she couldn't get out during the day or night to drink water. On one occasion, she was so dehydrated that when she made it to the kitchen, she drank cleaning solution because that's all she could find. Other times there were instances involving Bianca beating her ruthlessly with belts and cords and pouring scalding hot water on her back and chest. On the night of the 15th of December 2012, Samaya became lethargic and sleepy. She was locked inside a bedroom in her apartment and was left with Bianca's cousin, Roshawn Stanch. When they returned to the apartment, Samaya was dead. An autopsy revealed that the girl's cause of death was dehydration. The trio drove Samaya's body out to the desert where she was buried in a shallow grave. Her disappearance was investigated on the 27th of December 2012, and the trio were arrested and charged with the murder of Samaya the following day. The District Attorney's Office said that unfortunately this case encountered several delays going forward throughout the years. However, it has stayed committed to the case and did not waver in any manner. On the 6th of October 2020, Ronald Gear and Bianca Stanch were found guilty on charges of first-degree murder, child abuse, and special allegation of causing death. On Friday, the 12th of March 2021, Bianca and Ronald were sentenced to 32 years to life in prison for the murder of Samaya. Ray Sean Stanch pleaded guilty earlier this year to his involvement in this crime and still faces sentencing. An 80-year-old Scottish pensioner who abused 6 kids and forced them to eat dog food has been jailed. The incidents occurred when Frances Forsyth had young children stay at her home between the 21st of September 1973 and the 31st of December 1980. Forsyth was in her 30s at the time, and she was married to Brian McKernan, who was 15 years her junior. They moved into a one-bedroom flat in Fountainbridge, Edinburgh. She neglected the youngsters, where they were left dirty, unwashed, and smelling badly. They were poorly clothed, starved, and forced to scavenge from a dog bowl when she left the room after feeding her 4 dogs fresh food. They would often eat mouldy food off the ground and resort to stealing dog biscuits from a cupboard since they were so hungry. She encouraged her husband to beat the children, while she also carried out sadistic assaults on them after they failed to carry out household chores. Forsyth admitted to punching and kicking a number of the children to the head and body, and on one occasion, she held a child's hand against an electric fire. Arriving at court by ambulance on the 8th of March 2021, Forsyth pleaded guilty to 4 charges of willfully ill-treating, abandoning, and neglecting and assaulting 6 children, and was jailed for 16 months. Her husband died from cancer in late 2019, just weeks after being listed as a registered sex offender. A Missouri woman has been sentenced to 5 years in jail after entering a plea deal for starving a 10-week-old son to death. Michaela Hill, 27 of Bridgeton, was sentenced on Tuesday the 9th of March 2021 after she pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of child endangerment in the 2018 death of her son Samuel Williamson Jr. Hill was given credit for more than 2 years of jail time already served. In exchange for her plea, prosecutors agreed to drop a second-degree murder charge and reduce the charge of child abuse resulting in death. On the 2nd of September 2018, Bridgeton police were called to the Lodge Hotel in Penridge Drive, where Hill was living with the infant and a toddler. They arrived at 3:05 p.m. and found the infant was unresponsive and unsuccessfully tried to revive him. An autopsy indicated that the baby weighed 6 pounds, or 2.7 kilograms, and died of severe malnutrition. The prosecutors stated that Hill failed to feed the baby for about 12 hours before she found him unresponsive. The baby had previously received treatment several times at a St. Louis area hospital prior to his death, with symptoms of being severely underweight, vomiting blood, and having trouble breathing. Michaela Hill's husband had assaulted her a week prior to her child's death, and she'd been placed at the Lodge Hotel by a women's shelter. Her other child was put into the care of Children's Division of Missouri Department of Social Services. A 32-year-old Russian man has been arrested for murdering a woman and her 3 grandchildren. The incident began on the 7th of March when 45-year-old Tatiana Grotova was babysitting her grandchildren at her daughter's apartment in the town of Lukino Dulovo, not far from Moscow, when the kids' parents went out for a walk. There was 8-year-old Veronica and the twins Dmitry and Mikhail, who were 2 years of age. Upon return, the couple found themselves locked outside the apartment complex, so 28-year-old Irene Klebanina tried contacting her mother. When she didn't answer her phone, she became concerned and she contacted the police. When the authorities arrived, they broke down the door and made a horrifying discovery. The grandmother and the 3 children were all stabbed to death. Blood was everywhere. The dead grandmother was found clutching the bodies of her 2-year-old twins, desperately trying to shield the youngsters from the brutal knife attack. Veronica was also discovered dead, found cowering behind the sofa. 2 knives were used in the slaughter, and all 4 victims suffered at least 10 stab wounds each. The grandmother's 32-year-old nephew, Sergei Morozov, was found at the scene, shouting incoherently at the officers. The authorities arrested him, and they're currently in the process of investigating the matter. The couple have another child named Olga, who wasn't present when all this happened. The motive of the attack remains undisclosed. A mother's just been found guilty of sexually assaulting and abusing her daughter's young friends during booze and drug-fueled weekend slumber parties held at her home. It all began between September 2017 and February 2018, when 38-year-old Christina Greer allowed her 11-year-old daughter to organise sleepovers at the Papillion, Nebraska home, involving half a dozen kids, including the victims, 2 boys aged 12 and 13. During this time, she let the kids consume alcohol and marijuana-infused gummy bears. Christina gave alcohol to one minor at least 50 times. She then made a move on the inebriated and drugged up boys to have sex with them. Christina's daughter testified that she heard her mother and one of the boys in her room, and they were kissing. She also said that her mum had taken her to Walmart to buy some watermelon margarita mix for one of the sleepovers, and that she had poured the drinks for the children. She also said that her mother had warned her not to mention the sleepovers to anyone, because she'll get into trouble and lose the kids if she got found out. A teenage witness also testified that Christina's daughter said that the boy was having sex with her mum at the time. After discovering that an investigation into the matter was being pursued, Christina immediately told the kids to delete any evidence from their phones, but a detective discovered explicit images of her on a victim's phone. The 13-year-old boy told the investigators that he had sexual intercourse with Christina at least 3 times during the nights he stayed over at the family's home. On Wednesday, the 10th of March, Christina was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree sexual assault, 6 counts of child abuse, and 2 counts of witness tampering. Her sentencing will be held on the 19th of April, and she faces between 45 years to life in prison. A 50-year-old Washington woman has been arrested 23 years after she's been accused of dumping her newborn's body in a trash can at a gas station. The incident occurred on the 20th of November 1997 at a Chevron 24-hour Lake City convenience store, which is now a Shell outlet located at 8721 Lake City Way Northeast. Workers were shocked when they stumbled across the body of a lifeless baby boy in a trash can in the store's bathroom. The trash can liner was a clear plastic, so the employee emptying the garbage immediately saw the body. An autopsy of the child showed that the infant had been born alive 2 days prior, and the death was ruled a homicide. An image of the woman was captured on the gas station security footage, but despite numerous tips on the possible identity of the lady, it remained a mystery. A placental blood clot found at the scene allowed forensic scientists at the crime lab to develop the mother's DNA profile earlier on in the investigation, but it was never matched to DNA included in the CODIS DNA database, and the case went cold. In 2018, the case was reinvestigated. Using genetic genealogy and visiting ancestry websites, investigators were able to create family trees from the DNA and narrow the suspect down to a Seattle woman who was 27 years old at the time, who fit the description in the surveillance footage. Detectives then went undercover and observed the suspect and secretly obtained her DNA. That DNA was entered into the crime lab's database, where authorities received a match on the 31st of December 2020. The woman, whose name remains undisclosed, was arrested and taken into custody on the 11th of March at the King County Jail. She appeared in court on the 12th of March, and a judge set bail at $10,000 and found probable cause for second-degree murder. A charging decision is expected to be on Monday. A prostitute has been arrested after an argument over the cost of her services led the woman to rob her client at knife point. The incident occurred on Sunday the 14th of March in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, after 34-year-old Virginia Chesley and the victim got into a bitter dispute after arrangements were made to exchange sexual favours for money but she felt shortchanged by the victim. Upset, she allegedly held a knife to the victim's throat and took the wallet, phone, and car keys. Chesley was found with $160 in a bra and admitted to police that she had 2 pocket knives. Public police records indicate that this isn't her first run-in with the law. She's previously been arrested for shoplifting an item worth $250 on the 25th of November 2018, but was released a few days later. Chesley's been held in the Myrtle Beach jail as investigations into the incident continues. A man has been arrested for fatally stabbing and mutilating his grandfather after he pulled the man's ears from his pocket while being questioned by the police. On Saturday the 13th of March at 6:45 p.m. in Lake County, Florida, authorities called out to a home where 30-year-old Colby Parker reported that he'd been in a fight over marijuana inside a home he shares with his 77-year-old grandfather, Ronald Wells. Colby told authorities that he was smoking marijuana that night with his grandfather when he lunged at him with a knife. While searching the property, they found a blood-stained baseball bat in the corner of the porch and a butcher's knife on the kitchen table that had blood dripping off it. Colby said Ronald tried to stab him, but he was able to disarm the knife from him and used it against him. While he was discussing this with the deputies, Parker pulled 2 ears from his pocket and said they were his grandfather's. Colby admitted to beating Ronald with a baseball bat, stabbing him with a knife, and cutting off his ears. Officers then tried arresting Colby, but he put up a fight and attacked the officers, trying to disarm them. After a brief struggle, he was taken into custody and charged with murder, 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer, and 2 counts of resisting arrest with violence. A 14-year-old boy has been arrested following the death of a 6-year-old girl in New Carlisle, Indiana. Grace Ross was reported missing from a Chapman Street home by a family at 6:30 p.m. Less than 2 hours later, at 8:25 p.m, her lifeless body was found in nearby woods. The boy, who's believed to be responsible for her murder, has not been named by officials because he's a minor. Preliminary autopsy results show that Grace was murdered by asphyxiation, with further test results to follow. Neighbours who live in the complex near the woods where the girl was found called the incident disturbing. The boy is held in a detention centre and faces murder charges. The dead body of a Shelby, Ohio woman who went missing late last month was found Sunday night on the 14th of March in the trunk of her car. Prior to her disappearance, 33-year-old mother of 4, Melinda Davis, was last seen driving a car early Thursday morning on the 25th of February, travelling to Mansfield, Ohio. She was going to meet her 43-year-old ex-boyfriend, John Mack, to pick up some items she left behind. Melinda contacted a friend while she was on her way to see John and said, "If you don't hear from me, call the police." The next day, when Melinda failed to show up for a pre-arranged breakfast date with her niece, her family called police and reported her missing. The authorities searched for her at John's house at Cliffside Drive, but they didn't find John or Melinda. Instead, they found evidence of traces of blood, leading to kidnapping charges against John. After a week on the run, John was arrested without incident on Thursday evening, on the 4th of March. He was arrested by the Mansfield police, who received a tip that the suspect was in the area of East 1st and South Adams Streets. At 6:15 p.m, on the 14th of March 2021, a black 2013 Volkswagen Jetta was spotted by a citizen sitting in an apartment parking lot, which is located along the 5600 block of Zachary Court in Galloway, Ohio. The authorities received a tip from that person about the car matching her license plate. It was found to contain Melinda's dead body in the trunk. John, who was already in custody at the Richland County Jail, is now facing charges for Melinda's murder and is on a $1 million bond. A Missouri couple were arrested on the 10th of March for 102 child abuse charges, where 16 girls were sexually, physically, and emotionally abused, and a Christian boarding school they operated. The place was called Circle of Hope Girls Ranch and Boarding School in Humansville, Missouri, which opened in 2006. The mission of the facility was targeted towards young unruly teenage girls in order to help turn their lives around. They've been destroyed by poor choices and behaviours. 71-year-old Boyd Householder and 55-year-old Stephanie Householder are facing child abuse charges for crimes allegedly committed while operating the now defunct facility. In mid-August last year, state investigators removed 24 girls from the facility and the property was sold. Some of the cruel methods used in the abuse was Boyd pushing his knee into the backs of several of his victims, applying pressure to certain pressure points, and forcing victims to hold the push-up position for extended periods of time. Boyd handcuffed the young girls and poured hot sauce down their throats. He shoved their faces into horse manure, whipped them with belts, slapped them in the face with an open hand, and slammed their bodies or heads into the walls. He had one girl swallow 220 ounces of water, then have her run a mile until she vomited, then demanded she start running again. Another victim said she had a dirty sock put in her mouth and had her face sprayed with a hose, making it hard to breathe as the water went up her nose and mouth. Boyd is said to have openly encouraged self-harm, advising the young girls the best ways to commit suicide, such as cutting your wrists upwards and not across. Boyd is said to have raped, sodomized, molested, and had oral sex with the young girls. The couple's daughter, Amanda Householder, has spoken openly about the allegations of abuse against her parents and said she has witnessed it firsthand. She said that if my dad thought a girl was vain or thought she looked pretty, he would cut her hair off just to humiliate her. She said when I was young, I would reach out to people saying this is how my parents are treating me, and I was never heard. I would always get punished more for it because it'll get back to my parents that I was speaking out. She said on TikTok on Wednesday, I'm sad because they're my parents, but something my parents would always tell me is, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it. Well, my parents made their bed, and now they're going to have to lie in it. As hard as that is for me, it's about time. Stephanie Householder said she feels like she's the victim, and the students are angry and bitter, and they want to blame and take their anger out on someone else. Both householders pleaded not guilty at their initial court appearance on Wednesday, the 10th of March. The next scheduled hearing is on the 17th of March. A 21-year-old man has been arrested and faces charges of attempted murder after shooting a police officer 4 times, hitting him in the face and head at a mall in Nebraska. The incident occurred at 3:27 p.m. on Friday the 12th of March 2021, when authorities responded to a report of a suspected shoplifter at J.C. Penning's at Westroads Mall in Omaha, Nebraska. A department store security worker detained 21-year-old Kenya Jenkins after he put a package of t-shirts in a backpack before attempting to exit the store without paying for them. While being detained, he provided the store security with a false name and was uncooperative and hostile. The situation escalated when Omaha police officer Jeffrey Whitstruck tried speaking with him. Whitstruck requested Jenkins to take his backpack off, but he stood up instead and put his right hand in his sweatshirt pocket. Whitstruck asked Jenkins to show his hands multiple times, but Jenkins kept refusing. As he was trying to place Jenkins under arrest, he started resisting. Following a struggle, the suspect pulled a gun from his sweatshirt pocket and fired 4 shots at the officer. He was struck in the face and the top of his head. The suspect fled the scene in his white BMW, but was later arrested by a Nebraska State Patrol trooper following a 140-mile-per-hour speed chase. Jenkins faces charges including attempted murder and use of a weapon to commit a felony. Whitstruck, who's been in the department since 2016, was transported to hospital in a critical but stable condition and is recovering. A man has died and a woman injured after a stranger strolled up to them sitting in a parked car and started shooting directly at them in Pasadena, California. The incident occurred just before 9 p.m. on Saturday the 13th of March, when authorities received numerous reports of a shooting along 2500 block of East Foothill Boulevard. They were seated in a parked car when a man in dark clothing walked up to them, pointed a gun in their direction, and started shooting. When police dispatched to the scene, they found the 2 victims that were seated inside the parked car. One was a 23-year-old man from Azusa who'd been hit several times by gunfire, while the woman suffered only minor injuries. Paramedics rushed them both to a local hospital, where the man was initially listed in a critical condition and died the next day from his wounds. The 19-year-old woman from Duarte was treated for non-life-threatening injuries and was released. A witness told the police that a suspect ran from the location following the shooting and noticed a sedan with tinted windows speed from the scene. The man hasn't been caught and the matter is still under investigation.